Kaze muri iki kiganiro cegeranijwe na TURIKUMWE, umuryango uhuza abarundi aho bari ku isi yose mu ntumbero yo kuganira no guhanahana ivyiyumviro ku vyerekeye ubumenyi n'iterambere, gufashanya no gushira hamwe.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for listening today. Welcome to today's episode of TURIKUMWE. This is Shadia, and I'll be your host today. Today's episode is about being queer in a world that polices and marginalizes queer people while rewarding straight people. I will be joined by my friend Aury, who identifies as queer, and I have asked him to call me out on my own blind spots when it comes to this issue. No one, including myself, is exempt from enforcing homophobia since we're all born into homophobic societies. We must consistently check ourselves for any homophobic tendencies and uproot them. Without further ado, hello, Aury. Thanks for hanging out with me today.
Hi, thank you for having me today.
Of course.
I should probably get ahead with introductions.
Yes, please introduce yourself, your name, where you're from, where you live, what you do, your pronouns, and a fun fact about you.
Sure. Okay, so my name is Aury, like Shadia mentioned. I'm 23 years old. I was born and raised in Bujumbura, but then I moved to the States when I was 17, 18, so about 5-6 years ago. And I've moved to different places within the States itself, but I'm currently based out of Austin, Texas, and I work as a product designer, and fun fact about me, this is something that I wrote the other day. It was last week or so. I do not sleep with pillows. I don't like sleeping with a pillow on my bed, so I don't have any pillows. And I feel like every time I've told people that, they're always shocked. But I just find this so uncomfortable, and so I prefer to sleep without pillows. So
No,
that's a fun fact about me.
That is weird. and I get I kind of get it. Pillows hurt my neck.
Yeah.
However, I still, when I don't have a pillow, it's well, then this is worse. I'd rather my neck is broken.
No, every time I've had a friend over, to watch a movie or something, they are always surprised to find out that I don't have any pillows on my bed, and it's I just don't like sleeping with pillows.
Oh yeah, I've heard of all kinds of people who do weird things. There's this person who I've heard of who sleeps on the floor by choice, and I just to each their own, I guess.
To each their own.
Okay, so let's start with a few definitions, just for context, in case our listeners don't know what does LGBTQ mean or queer and all these things. So can you help us out? What does LGBTQ mean to you?
Sure. So LGBTQ stands for lesbian, gay, bisexual, trans, and queer. It can be expanded to be including intersex, asexual folks. So usually when I've seen this word written, it's usually LGBTQIA plus or LGBTQ plus, and it basically is a word that was kind of coined to, I guess, capture the vast community of folks who are not necessarily straight and are not necessarily cisgender.
What does cisgender mean?
Yeah, so cisgender mean someone who identifies with the gender that they were assigned at birth. So, I was assigned male at birth, and I do identify with being a male, and so I'm cisgender. A transgender is the opposite of cisgender. It's someone who is transgender is someone who doesn't necessarily identify with the gender that they were assigned at birth. And that includes non-binary people, gender non-conforming, gender queer, gender fluid, female to male, transgender folks, male to female transgender folks. It's a kind of wide net of folks who don't necessarily fall into that cisgender spectrum.
Awesome. And what about, is queer the same as LGBTQ?
I would say so. I would say when I refer to the queer community, I'm basically referring to the LGBTQ community. For me, it's just an easier way to just say, the LGBTQ community. I just prefer the word queer. A lot of people may not necessarily feel comfortable using the word queer because it is a slur. Like back when, gay folks, LGBTQ folks were closeted, the word queer, which means weird, was something that was hurled at them. So in a way, it can be seen as a slur, but it's one of those words that people have reclaimed and are using to empower themselves. Sort of like the word fag, or the N word
or bitch, yeah.
Right, or bitch.
You turn that around and say, you know what? I'm gonna own that, and you don't get to call me that. I'm gonna call myself that, so that you don't use that against me.
Exactly.
And
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, what about the term gay?
Gay is it refers to your sexual orientation. I've mostly seen it used with like cisgender men, but I think anybody can identify as gay. But it basically says that you're attracted to people of the same gender as you. So like, if you're a man, you're attracted to other men. If you're a woman, you're attracted to other women. If you, that's one way to say it.
And so, speaking of gender, what is the difference between gender and sex? Because those two things are not the same, don't mean the same thing, but people use them interchangeably, and it's not right. It's not correct.
Yeah. So the term gender, I guess, refers to what.
And I know this is a difficult thing to explain.
It is,
because it's like there's a lot of theory that goes into it, and a lot of biology, and just it's hard to explain in a few words.
Right.
But I would say that maybe sex is your biological categorization, what was put on your birth certificate when you were born, and refers to your genitals.
Yes.
Whereas gender is a construct. It's a social construct that refers to not only roles in terms of, if you were born with a penis, this is what you're supposed to do in the home, or this is what you're supposed to wear, and this is and those differentiations that don't necessarily that are things that society agreed on, but that honestly can be changed and dismantled.
That's a pretty good way to put it. I would say, like, gender is definitely a social construct. It's about, like, when the moment you're born, you're assigned a gender. You're told you're a man, you're told you're a woman, and that comes with its own baggage. It comes with, like, a man is supposed to do this and that, a woman is supposed to do this and that, but it doesn't really account for the different variations that can come about in life. Some folks are not necessarily born with, like, either male genitalia or female genitalia. Some folks are born with both at the same time, and so we always tend to think of gender as a binary, and I think that's a really false dichotomy. And I think we also tend to think of I also try to move away from, like, referring to, like, sex as, like, biological. I think that tends to I've seen this, like, come up in, like, conversations around, like, cis women versus transgender women, where like basically cis women, I've seen cis women claim that they are, they have more of a legitimate claim to womanhood versus trans
Yeah.
women because they're biologically women. And so like, and that's like why the, the term biological can be like almost essentializing, like saying, hey, if you are
Right.
this person, you're essentially like this and you will stay this forever. And
Forever.
right,
Yeah.
like yeah, it's basically saying, if you're
Oh,
born with a
yeah.
penis, and if you do transition and and you are
Determinism.
right, exactly,
Basically.
you're going to be that
Yeah.
forever. You're still going to be a man with that's
And
yeah.
that is not even different from what science used to be used
Right.
for a long time ago to say, Black people are born looking like this or with a brain that looks like this, so they are supposed to be like this forever.
Exactly.
And the same can be said about sex being considered a biological thing.
Right.
And we're not even taking into consideration the fact that sex change is a thing now. So what do we say? I don't know. That's a good point, and I apologize for having.
You literally you have nothing to apologize for. I feel like we're always on learning things, and so like it's something that I personally wasn't aware of because I'm cisgender, and I've been called in on that before, and like and I'm always like learning about like the whole idea of like gender versus sex, and any sort of idea surrounding that. And so like I feel like I'm not quite there yet myself. And so there's tons of resources out there for folks to learn more about that. And I mean, even throughout cultures around the world, before like the Western Europeans went about the world to just like colonize them, there were like societies that were constructed in a way that understood that there were men and women, but also other folks outside of that. You find that in like Native American tradition. You find that in like pre-colonial Filipino tradition. You also find that in like other parts of Africa as well. And so like the idea of people existing outside of the binary is not new. It's always been there. And so, that's, and like, I feel like the idea of turning to science to explain things is a very like Western, thing to do. And I think there's value in science. I'm not completely dismissing science. There's value in science, but, we tend to think of science as something that's like rigid, that will never evolve, but it's always also evolving,
I know, that makes me think of when science was about the earth being flat, and that was it, right? And then and the first person who said, no, actually the earth might be round was killed. And so it's like that is silly to think that, or to use some scientific facts to make a point that is rooted in homophobia or
exactly
bigotry.
Yeah, exactly.
So I was gonna ask you to define pronouns, but I think that's, that goes without saying. Pronouns are your the like she, he, they, I, I don't even know how to you explain that. But why is it important for people to ask other people
what their pronouns are?
Yes.
Yeah.
Why is that a big deal?
I think it's a big deal because it oftentimes when we think of gender, there is this aspect of gender presentation, how you're presenting on the outside to the world. And so, while I, for example, may dress fully like a man, or what his society constructed as what a man should wear and dress like, I may not identify as a man. I may not be like I could just say I'm not a man. Like I'm, or you could just find me on the day where I'm like presenting as a man, but on other days, on like 364 other days, I'm presenting like more feminine, you know? And so like the pronouns are a way to, I guess, stay in that, honor that
identity.
exactly.
Yeah.
It's a way to honor that identity. It's a way to say, I see you for who you are, you know, and
that won't impose my preconceived notions of who you should be on you.
Because gender is a very personal thing. It is both a personal thing but also a communal thing, because we don't necessarily live outside of society. We live with other people, but I think it's first and foremost a personal, like, it's a personal like exploration for each one of us, and so like you know, I'm not going to use myself as an example, but there are folks who are gender nonconforming and who may present as male but want to be referred to as you know, non-binary folks and gender nonconforming people, and they may use the pronouns they them to go around. I do have friends like that who, you know, who may present as female but aren't necessarily female or non-binary, and may prefer to be referred to, not be preferred, but like they want to be referred to as they them, you know.
And it honestly doesn't cost a thing to respect someone's identity and refer to them as they wish to be referred to. So I've never understood. And also I think a lot of it has to do with fear of misgendering. I know I've been scared of asking because I'm like, I should just know. No, you can't just know. You do need to ask.
And that's exactly right. That's exactly right, because if you don't ask, you won't ever know. And I think, and it's okay to make mistakes when it comes to like using the right pronouns for someone. You know, I think most people, most gender nonconforming and non-binary people will correct you. And it's okay to say, oh, okay, thank you, my bad. You know, and then you start referring to them with the correct pronouns. I'm sorry.
You're fine.
And so, and I've seen people make a big deal out of it, but it's like misgendering is definitely a mistake that often happens. But when you blow it out of proportion, it makes the person you're talking to feel even worse, because they're like, oh my gosh, I'm making them feel bad about misgendering me, and it becomes this whole thing. And so like, it's okay to say, oh, thank you for correcting me, you know, and then you start referring to them with the correct pronouns, and then just move on.
And most queer people I've met were open about you know, their pronouns and all these things. I think if you're asking in good faith, queer people are some of the most generous educators I've ever met, and I appreciate them for that. I appreciate you for that.
Absolutely.
And speaking of that, what are your pronouns, and what do you I think you already told us your pronouns, but I want that reiterated. And what is your sexual orientation and any other identities you have?
So I am a cisgender guy. I was assigned male at birth and do identify as a male right now. So I use he, him, his, but I'm okay with people referring to me with other pronouns as well. You know, I feel like when I'm with my other friends, like when we're joking, it like sometimes my friends will use she, you know, to refer to me.
Seen that.
Right. And I absolutely am okay with that. I'm also okay with like people referring to me as like they, them. So I don't really have a preference. So like, but I'm aware that I do present as a man, and probably will like people will turn to he, him, his, and that's okay. That's those are my correct pronouns.
So if
go ahead.
And if I've always wondered if I'm not in your close group of friends, is it okay if I refer to you as she?
Yeah.
As a joke, in the same sense that your friends do?
Yeah, I feel like that, to me, that would be, like, I personally would be okay with that. Someone else may not feel the same way, and I think it's always, like you said, earlier, like
Mm-hmm.
a good thing to ask, which you just did. You're like, oh, is it okay if I, you know, yeah. And like,
Yeah.
that's always a good practice to just ask people, hey, is it okay if I like use these pronouns to refer to
Mm.
you? And so
Okay.
kudos to you.
Thank you.
um, but yeah,
You were gonna
yeah,
say what your
you were,
yeah.
your other question was like your sexual orientation.
Mm-hmm.
I'm very much gay and open about it.
Mm.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
When did you first know that you were gay?
So I first knew that I was gay. Um, oh my gosh. I was probably like a kid, like 3, 4 years old. I I
Mm.
think that you know, I think I could be wrong, but I read somewhere in like some sort of psychology book that like I think around the age of 3, 4, like that's when kids start to realize to first find out about um, their sexuality almost. You know,
Mm-hmm.
like that's I don't know if that's probably not the right way to put it, but like it's like when the whole Oedipus like complex develops, you know, it's around that
Mm-hmm.
age,
Yeah.
you know, and so like I knew that I wasn't into other uh, like women.
Mm.
Oh, I I always say this as a joke, but like I feel like how do you une série de Memory Artel 9.
Mm.
Uh, um, I'm forgetting in English, ni Family Matters avec Steve
Mm.
Urkel et tout. Do you know what I'm referring
Um.
to?
Yes.
Okay. Yes.
Let me
Yes. Yes. Yes.
see.
So that there's a character in that show. His name is Stefan, and he's basically this alter ego
Mm.
that Steve Urkel becomes when he goes through this machine, and he becomes this like very swaggerific
Mm.
dude named Stefan. And I remember just like watching Stefan on TV for the first time and being like, yeah, I don't think I like women.
I like Stefan.
Yeah, and I feel like
Mm.
later on when I was you know a bit older, when I was like 11 or 12, is when I was able to name that. That was when I was able to
Mm.
find a definition in a dictionary for you know what my
Mm.
sexual orientation was. You know, the word homosexual was something that I started looking up a little bit more. And I was like, oh yeah, this clearly defines me and you know my sexual
Yeah.
orientation. And so like I would say like I knew when I was a young kid, but then it wasn't until I was like in my teens that I was able to name it for myself and be like, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
this is it.
Huh.
Hmm.
I mean, what you said about children knowing, I know that I knew I liked a boy when I was like 5.
Right.
I know exactly who he was, and I don't think it's any different for you, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And
Mm-hmm.
I was a young boy when I was like 4 or 5 watching Family Matters, and that's how I came across Stefan. And I was like, I do like this, you know,
Mm-hmm.
this guy. Yeah.
So when homophobic people hear the word gay,
Hmm.
the first thing that comes to mind is gay intimacy or sex.
Yeah.
And I personally think that that's weird because when I hear the word straight, I don't think, oh, straight sex, totally people doing things.
Uh huh.
Um, what other things should be associated with the word gay?
Uh. Ooh, that's a good question. And I was thinking about this a lot, like a lot. I really like gay being associated with like uh, camp. I don't know if you've heard of the word camp,
Yeah.
but
What is it? Can you explain
sure,
what camp is? I can also look it up.
sure. So camp is basically it's it's like a genre of like a style of art
Mm,
that is very exaggerated. Like I you know when I think of like drag, right?
mm,
Drag is like very camp because it's like people dressing up as women in the most exaggerated way, or like women dressing up as men in the most exaggerated way, and like acting out what a man is like or what a woman is like in the most exaggerated way. And so like when I think of like gay people, they are people who tend to like really exaggerate certain things in a way that's funny, in a way that's like it's in a way that I think it's lovable. I think, yeah,
Yeah,
I think,
I agree.
and so that's like one thing that I want people to associate the word gay with.
Mm,
Um, yeah, I feel like creativity is one other word that I want people to associate the word gay with. Gay people tend to be very creative, you know.
mhm,
But there's also, I don't think there's anything wrong with associating gay people with like gay sex and intimacy. Um,
mhm.
I, because
It just can't be all
it
that
just can't be
it
all
is
that.
associated. Yeah.
Exactly, exactly.
Mm,
You know, and I'm saying that because I've seen a lot of gay people. You know, the one who, the one who like want to assimilate into like cishet culture, who
mm,
want to be palatable, who want to be respectable, like kind of try to put down the overtly gay intimate
mm,
intimacies as like something,
like
yeah, trying to push that
like
away. But
people
it's like,
holding hands.
right, and
Yeah.
I feel like that is also part of gay culture. That is also part of uh, where like gay liberation movements around the world were reclaiming
Mm,
when they were fighting for gay rights, because they're like, hey, like I should be able to like, you know, kiss my boyfriend or kiss my girlfriend um, in public,
in
out in
public.
public, and that's
Mm,
okay, and that's part of who I am as a gay person. And but I agree with you. Like I think there are other things that gay people should be known for. You know,
mhm.
creativity is one of those. Camp is one of those. There are multiple things that gay people should be associated with. So
Yeah, I
yeah,
think
but
for one thing that your gayness has taught
uh
me,
huh.
what to think about the most, I think, is friendship, because
Ooh.
I have watched you with your gay friends,
Mm.
and I it has been such a beautiful thing to witness.
Yeah.
I mean, the whole, camp, over the topness,
Mm-hmm.
glam, all of that is very common, but I feel like before I I knew you were gay and all, and I knew your gay friends. I didn't realize how deep your friendships could be, and
Yeah.
how, I don't know. So I'm really glad that,
Yeah. And you bring up a really good point, which is like when I think of the word gay, I think of family as well. I think for me,
mm,
you know, how I was able to come out to myself and to others was because I found a community of people who were in the same boat, who were like,
mm-hmm,
you know, showering me with love and care, and who were just telling me like, you are loved as you are. I still have those people in my life today, and I'm
mm,
extremely grateful for them. And I feel like that's also one thing that I associated the word gay with. Like, there's a deep connection that I have with like other, you know, gay men,
yeah.
especially other gay black men. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And if you watch the show
Uh
Pose,
huh.
that is a big component too. That,
Exactly.
the houses, the house of Bianca, and
Yes.
all those things that make warm my heart in such a way that I can't explain, because I feel like community like that
Mm-hmm.
is what we all need, and I'm
Yes.
just happy that you were
Yes.
able to find
Yeah,
that.
I will say, like, I feel like every queer or gay person out there probably has like chosen family that they have found for themselves,
Mm,
because I mean, it's hard to say, but there's still not that much acceptance in the world. And
mm,
for a lot of gay folks tend to turn to their own communities, their like fellow queer people, to find
yeah.
that sense of family, to find that sense of community, because they may not necessarily find that within their own like blood families, you know? Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's safe to say that these communities are so deeply rooted,
Mm-hmm.
came in, took place in response to overt, homophobia from society,
Mm-hmm.
being shunned, and then people having to basically survive by rallying together.
Right.
And I feel like there's so much that we can learn, especially living in the West,
Yeah.
from and especially now that we're talking about communism.
Uh-huh.
I see so many things that the queer community could teach us in terms of survival together,
Mm-hmm.
looking out for each other, mutual aid, and things like that.
Right. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. I feel like those are big traditions in like the queer community, but also in like other marginalized communities as well. I feel like when I think of like like the like African Americans and like Black communities across the diaspora have always shown solidarity amongst themselves and with each other, and that's
Or Latin
and Latin
communities
communities
too.
too, and it's beautiful. It's amazing to see that. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So your parents probably never talked to you about homosexuality. So what specific factors in our culture made you feel like being gay was wrong, and how did you deal with that? Because you found out when you were 3 or something,
Right.
and put a word onto it when you were a teenager. But
Yeah.
why did you stay closeted? What are the things in our culture that made you feel like saying that out loud is wrong, or
Right.
telling a boy I like him might get me in trouble?
Right. Um, a lot of things. A lot of things.
All of
All
it,
all of
everything.
it. You know, I feel like I mentioned when I was like 3, 4 years old, that was like when I sort of realized that I was like into boys. And I remember later on, maybe like a year or two after that, like, so I had grown up, I had like a lot of like girl cousins. Like most of my cousins who were around my age or like slightly older, like were almost always girls, and so I would play with them. And one thing that we would do is, they would dress me up. I would be like the little like doll, and they would like dress me up in their dresses and like, put on fake makeup and stuff like that. And it was really fun, and I loved it. And I was a kid. I was just like enjoying myself playing with them. And I remember one time, um, I will not name anybody, but like I had, I had been dressed up in this like dress that belonged to one of my cousins, and then her mother came back to pick her up from our place, and her mother found me dressed up in that dress with them playing with me, and she got really mad. She got really upset. She started screaming at me, and so like you can imagine a 4 or 5 year old like being
Yeah.
screamed at for just wearing a dress. You start making the association like, oh, like dresses are for girls. You're not a girl, so if you dress in a dress, like people will get upset. People will scream at you. People will be violent towards you. So like, watch out what you do. Watch out what you say. So those are subliminal messages that like people are never overtly like, oh, you're gay and I hate you, but they send those there's like those subliminal messages within society, with specifically within Burundian society, that just tell you that, it's not okay, it's not right,
Yeah.
and that's just like one example. And then growing up in like this hyper religious society where like nearly everyone is a Mukizwa, and and I'm not saying like religious people are the most homophobic people out there, but they the
I
the
think their faith tends to
right
further
right
the message of homophobia.
exactly, and so yeah, so like I would hear sermons here and there that were like very homophobic. And fun fact that I just learned the other day is that the word homosexual did not belong in the Bible before 1937, I think.
What?
Yes. So before 1937, everything that is now in the Bible and is referred to as homosexual used to be the word pedophile. So the Bible was condemning pedophilia, but not condemning homosexuality. So that's just something.
Jesus.
That's
Yeah.
just something that I just found out, and I was like, oh wow. So this whole like, you know, the sermons were like really not about homosexuality. They were really about
Yeah.
pedophilia and like, yeah. But yeah, those are just like subliminal things that, you come across, and then, how I was dealing with that. I personally just like, you know, when the world around you is like violent towards you, I think the the best way to deal with that is self-preservation.
Right.
And so like for me, it looked like, never bring up the like gay stuff, right? And whenever that came up in a conversation, just like pretend you have nothing to do with it. I was told that I was very effeminate, and so like learning to be more masculine, right, is something that I guess I had to learn to like I guess pass in society, and different things to like basically survive, in such an oppressive society. You're like, okay, have to like, I have to survive, I have to self-preserve, and so in order to do so, I'm going to turn to these things that in a way repress me. I'm repressing myself to basically survive. Yeah.
So when you tell me this, every time you tell me this, it breaks my heart, and I'm at lost for words, and I just almost start shaking with, I don't even know what these feelings are, but I mean, it's because I've probably known you for a long time, and I just was completely oblivious, which is another, element of our culture, that we just, ignore things and push them under the rug, and just, and just being so self-centered, and not ever thinking that you were going through some different experience. But I just want to apologize for, not just for myself, but for anyone you ever encountered who perpetrated homophobia against you and made you feel the way you did, made you feel like you had to shut down a part of yourself in order to survive and be accepted. I specifically remember you when you were a little bit more masculine. I think you were like about to finish high school, and you were different.
Yeah.
I could tell you were different. You were dressing differently. Your voice had changed, and it was different. It's almost like you're a whole other person now. You're happier.
Yeah, I would say the same thing. I'm definitely like a much happier version of myself. And no, thank you for saying that. Thank you for, thank you for like, even recognizing that you might have been you might have been complicit in.
I was absolutely complicit. I wasn't doing anything. I wasn't, it wasn't even, I just liked hanging out with you. I didn't even.
And I did too. And I will tell you this. I don't know. Okay, this is probably like going off script, but like I remember just like growing up around you, and not just you, but around the, your group of girlfriends, and being like, this is beautiful. This is like a community that I appreciate. Like even though it felt very repressive in a lot of ways, being around you, Naba Martin, and all of them, right? It was like it was very life-giving, because you guys were not necessarily like
actively operating our own homophobia.
But you were not pushing me away. You were not kicking me out of your like little kikis, because
and we were older too.
Right. Yeah. And so like in a way I felt very welcomed amongst you guys in ways that I wasn't in other circles. And so like props to you. Like
Oh, I love you so much, and I'm happy to hear that we made you feel at home.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Anyway, so, and this question is I don't want it to sound like a burden on you, because I hate it when white people ask me, how should we undo racism in our, I'm like, that's your problem, deal with it, don't ask me. But
Yeah.
sorry, but how do we eliminate these parts of our culture that make children who are gay feel like they should not exist, and
Yeah.
their attractions are forbidden? And
I feel like things are changing like really rapidly these days. I feel like I'm seeing a lot more Burundian queer people take up space and be like, I'm here and I'm queer and I will not apologize for it. And to me, that is a really great first step. And then
Yeah.
I'm seeing like simultaneously, I'm seeing like there's like straight allies, or like straight accomplices, like stepping up and saying, yes, like they're here and they're queer and you won't do anything about it. Like, and
Yes.
like I'm seeing that in my own family, for example, you know, and like to me that's giving me a lot of hope, because it tells me that things might change pretty quickly. I think for homophobia to be uprooted, I think it has to go through like education, like mass education of like history, and almost like reimagining education that is not like like vestigial, like, or like residual of like colonial education, if that makes sense. You know, like we have to think about ways to separate ourselves from you know, the very super Christian, the very super like Western ways of teaching, and look at our own history, you know, look at our own pre-colonial history and study it with a lot more fervor, and like find ways, because I'm sure like there were a lot of like homo friendly societies across Africa, and so like in now suddenly Africa's like one of the most homophobic places in the world.
Literally calling for the killings of gay people. Yeah.
And so like, and I'm sure like, you know, 100 years or 200 years back, it wasn't that, you know, it was a whole different story. And so like, how can we go back and reclaim that? And I think through education is one way. And I'm not sure, I don't really think that that's the one and only solution, that's the one and only way to you know, get rid of, you know, homophobia.
Yeah.
But I also think it's like it's the same way we think of like racism as structural. I think homophobia is like structural. It needs to be taken away, like out of our laws. You know, like if I'm correct, like there is a law in the books mu Burundi ivuga yuko like you can be fined or you can go to jail if you are found, you know, in like homosexual practices or whatever. So like, I think like taking that of like our legislative sphere is also one way to like, you know, take out like homophobia from society. But I mean, it's
all very difficult and high level,
right? And it's and I honestly don't know how to solve it myself personally, but I feel like like I think people need to come together, the ones who are like invested in eradicating homophobia and pushing for change, and I think it's possible. I think it's very much possible for that to happen in our lifetime, you know, or maybe our kids' lifetime, you know.
Amen. You know, practically speaking, like the lack of familiarity that we have with our own systems, like the judicial system in Burundi and the education, like I don't know exactly how one goes about changing laws in Burundi. In America, you know, you can lobby your representatives, but how do we do that in Burundi? I don't know.
And I feel like
we can't.
When I think of like America and American government, like it's very like, you can almost predict it, right? You can almost predict how things are going to turn, because America is set in her old ways, basically. But Burundi, donc Burundi, like it's an ever changing, ever transforming like landscape. It's hard to say like, it's hard to say if this new government will be anything like the previous one. It's hard to say that it'll be anything like the ones from like the 1990s or 1980s. It's an ever changing like landscape.
Yep.
And so for us, it's hard to like fully grasp and be like, okay, here's how we can affect change when everything around us is always changing and we can't really predict human behavior and like all that stuff. And so, yeah.
And it's like a moody friend all over. You never know. And the fact that we can't even Google these things and that we're so far, it makes everything a lot harder to grasp.
Right.
But as an ally, one thing I want to say is, at the individual level, if you feel like the structural stuff is too much, like you don't know where to start, I think a good place to start is to educate yourself. Go read a book on homosexuality. Make friends who are different from you and listen to them. Be open and be flexible. And for people who are straight and who have never questioned their own sexuality, question it. Ask yourself the hard questions. How do you know that you're straight? How do you know that you're cis male or cis female and all these things? And also, like, in your own families, find ways, like the subtle ways that you perpetuate heteronormativity. And I'm talking about when you talk to your kids about sex or love, don't just talk about it in the binary way. Make it clear to your kids that it's okay to be gay and there are gay people and they exist. That way, when your kids see gay people, they won't get shocked or
exactly. No, absolutely.
Or be homophobic themselves.
100% agree with that. Yeah.
Awesome. How did you come out to your family? I know you came out, but is that something that you felt comfortable sharing?
Yeah, I'm absolutely. So thank you for asking that question. I think it's a very complicated question, but I'm really happy to answer it. So I came out to, oh my gosh. So I think I came out to my cousins first. Because I feel like just growing up, I've always been around my cousins and always really liked them. And so like I came out to like the first set of cousins in like 2018. So no, 2018, 2017. And honestly, like I didn't come out to them. They were basically coming to me and asking me like, like the things that Abarundi bagira Isakui, voila. My cousins would be like, "Okay, I'm hearing these things about you. Are they true?" And then I'd be like, "Yeah, I am gay. Like I'm pretty gay." And most of them were very like supportive, like I literally all of my cousins were supportive, except for maybe like one of them. But they even changed their mind later on. So like, and then the more difficult part was coming out to my parents, So the way that happened was, that was last year, early last year, early 2019. I had just graduated from college, and, to kind of reward myself for graduating, I, took a trip to DC. So back then I lived in Chicago. So I went from Chicago to DC for a week or two, and was literally had the most fun I've ever had in any place in the United States. Apologize. I basically, took different tours of like museums and uh, and I also went out. I also went out at night with some friends and folks that I had just met like during that trip. And I remember one specific night. I was gonna meet up with a friend that I had just met in DC that day, to go to like the gay neighborhood, to go to a few clubs, and I just wanted to like dress up nice. I wanted to like look cute, and so I put on a crop top and like a nice shirt on and some pants. And I put a little lipstick on as well. I don't know how to wear makeup, but I was like, I can put on the lipstick. um, and
Yeah.
then I really was like feeling myself. I will say that I was like, you look cute, Aury.
And you did. I
Thank
remember.
you. And in that moment, feeling so cute and everything, I was like, I'm going to post this picture on my Instagram, right? And I posted the picture, and it did garner a lot of attention. It did. Like, I think that at that time, it was the picture that had the most likes from all my pictures before, and it, lots of comments as well. I'm sorry. There's like something in the
You're
air.
fine. It's
It's
allergies.
allergies.
It's yeah.
But yeah, so basically, garnered a lot of attention, comments, whatever. And very quickly, I don't know who did, but somebody took a screenshot of that and then sent it to my parents. And I remember so that was on a Thursday night. On Friday morning when I woke up, like I had a barrage of messages coming from my parents. And I honestly wasn't ready. I wasn't ready.
Yeah.
I was like, what is happening? What's going on right now? And I think what I did is I turned off my phone. I turned off my phone. It was a way for me to escape it. Like I knew I would have to face it eventually, but I just wanted to escape in that moment because I was like, I'm still in DC for a day. I want to go out and like have brunch, enjoy myself, like visit some museums, see some monuments, do all these things that don't necessarily like have to be heavy lift stuff. And so like, and then when I leave from here, I'll face it. I'll call my parents or I'll send them an email or I'll do something, and that's what I did. I turned off my phone that day, went about my day like nothing happened. And the next morning when I was, at the airport going back to Chicago, I wrote an email to my parents that I sent to them very quickly. And I got a message back from my parents. And, that was it. That was basically it. Like I came out to my parents that way.
You were basically outed.
I was basically outed. Never really, and I think that's a really, I think at the time I was very hurt. I was very hurt because I felt like somebody had taken away that from me.
Your chance,
my chance
to do it on your own terms.
To do it on my own terms, to tell my own story on my own terms. And but I'm okay now. Like I'm like, it's over. It happened. And, I'm out to my parents. They're still struggling with it, as I don't know why.
I mean, it's it's not a question pour un champion, they live in the culture they live in.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And but they're still my parents and I'm still their child, and
and they come to visit you, and I think your relationship is better than.
Yeah, absolutely. I will say that things have gotten better between us. So like you said, my parents came to visit me a few months after I came out to them, maybe like 4 or 5 months after I came out to them. And I think we had like heart to heart conversations during that time. And like, we still don't agree on many things. But one thing that came out of that was very clear is that I'm their child and they're my parents, and they will always be my parents, and I will always be their child. And there's still going to be love there. But they may not agree with a lot of things that I do, you know, who I choose to love and whatever. And I cannot change that about them, and they cannot change like my being gay. And so we're just kind of like coasting along, I would say. You know, sometimes we just like never really bring it up and like pretend that things are normal. I mean, let's not turn this into a therapy session.
No. I completely, and honestly, for parents who are Burundian, I think they're more progressive than most, in the sense that they even I remember what you said the first time you told me about this. You said your dad specifically told you in the email that he sent back that we love you, you know, and that's the baseline. We can go from here knowing that we love you, and that's it. And we can discuss everything else. We can work out everything else, but we're not going anywhere. And knowing here in America and anywhere else, kids get kicked out of their houses.
Exactly.
You know, and so I'm really happy. I mean, it would be best if they were like, oh yeah, you go
right, we support you, we love you, we're proud of you. Like, I would love to hear that. But
and you will. I know you will one day.
And so, but that's basically how I came out to my family.
Would you recommend coming out to someone who lives in Burundi? I mean, it's one thing to come out when you live in America and you're relatively free to be. And Burundi is far and you don't have to interact with your family every day. You know, it's a different situation.
I think that's a tough question. I don't know exactly if it's okay or not to come out in Burundi, or at least like very publicly. I feel like there's a lot of risks that can come with that, and so I would strongly, I would say it's like it should be a personal choice for everyone. I feel like you need to be able to like look around yourself, look at your circumstances. Like, you know, when you do come out to your parents, will they continue to support you financially? Will they continue to like if you live with them, will they continue to like let you live with them? You know, will they, you know, you have to look at different factors. And I think it's all going to be individual, because you might be very lucky and have the most supportive, like, progressive parents out there who are like, yes, we love you, you know, like, we will always be your parents. We're very proud of you. And on the opposite end, you might have the, you know, like, super homophobic parents who are like, get out of this house, get out of our life. We don't want to have anything to do with you. And so I think it's a case-by-case thing, where you look at your own circumstances and you decide for yourself, like, you know, I don't work for anybody. Like, I don't rely on my parents or anybody else to be financially stable. I don't rely on, like, you know, all these things. And then you have to make that choice for yourself and be like, okay, I'm ready to come out. And I mean, hopefully one day, like, we'll live in a society where, like, coming out isn't a thing. Like, it doesn't come with consequences, you know? And hopefully soon.
Basically, be smart about it. Coming out, seeing people come out can be like, oh, that's nice. But be smart about it and make an informed decision.
Absolutely. And that,
don't put yourself in danger for the sake of coming out.
And I will say this, like, even though I was outed by my, you know, somebody else right out there, right? I was I had just graduated college and I had just gotten a job, right? And
Mm,
so like I was able to like say, hey, like if I do send this email to my parents, like, and they're like, we don't want to have anything to do with you, at least I'm like I'm financially stable, and I do have a
mm,
support system of friends, like chosen family, who will always be there for me, who will always like love on me and care for me, regardless of the
yeah.
outcome of this email going out. And so, like, you have to like, I was able to do that sort of introspection and say, you know, I'm I can go ahead and send this email. I can
Mm,
come out right now. Like it's okay for me to come out right now.
yeah.
Yeah.
So we're shifting gears here, but in terms of
Yeah.
desirability, when you live in this multicultural
Right.
society, what factors dictate who you date and who you don't date?
Mm, that's a good one. Um, ideally, like, like nothing, um, should dictate who
Mm,
you're dating and who you're not dating. Uh,
mm,
but we live in a society, just about any other society, that has systems of oppression, has, and I mean, I guess, given those systems of oppression have like hierarchies, where
mm,
like, if you are, thin, you're most desirable
mm,
versus someone who's fat. If you
yeah.
are, if you're white, you're more desirable than a black person. If you are
Mm-hmm.
more masculine, you're more desirable than a femme, person.
Mm,
And so there's different things that, still come into play, but normally, like ideally, none of this should matter.
yeah.
But so I have a question. So like for me personally, like what sort of factors dictate who I date and don't date?
Yes. Uh-huh. And I mean, and I can elaborate a little bit.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, there are some like Burundian queer people here,
Yeah.
but I have noticed that you don't necessarily date amongst themselves, and that could be,
Yeah.
you know, about preserving your relationships in your community. Like,
Right.
if you live in the house of Bianca, you're not gonna date your sibling,
Right.
and some,
Yeah.
so that kind of thing. And then also,
Mm.
if you're a queer Black person,
Mm.
do you just feel undesired by other
Mm.
queer Black people and therefore
Mm.
tend to,
Mm.
revolve around
That's a really,
lighter skinned queer
yeah.
people?
That's a really good question. Oh my God. Okay. So
And it's okay if you haven't really like thought deeply about
yeah.
it, but I know we had a conversation along these
Yeah.
lines a few weeks
Right.
ago. Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess, first part of the question was like, like there are other Burundian queers,
Mm,
like, um, why are you not dating them? Um, I guess like I really have not been around, like physically around too many Burundian like gay guys,
mm.
and so like
Your choices are
are very
limited.
limited, and the ones that are like in my life, I
Mm,
have a friend of mine who lives in the same city as me, um, you know, and like I don't think I would ever want to date them because I feel like there's the relationship is more of a friendship. It's more of like, I call it a sisterhood with, a sister
yeah.
spelled S-U-S,
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
um, that's what we're sis, and like,
Mm,
that's basically it. And I don't know that we could ever go beyond that. Now, in the future, if I move if I move to a place where there's a lot more burning gay guys, maybe
mm,
I would be comfortable like dating, I,
yeah.
and I think it also has to do with like not a lot of them being out
Mm,
and proud,
right.
and like, and that's not to shame anyone. I feel like coming out is a personal thing, and everybody should take it at their own pace, at their in their own terms. But I wouldn't necessarily feel comfortable dating someone who isn't out.
Right.
And yeah, and then when it comes to the second part, like where like, oh, like other gay Black men is not necessarily being into me, and that being a factor in like me not necessarily dating other Black gays, I think it does play. It all comes back to the systems of oppressions where like, you know, in a lot of ways, and I could be wrong. I would love to like study more on the subject, but like I've seen more of a hierarchy within the gay community where like, you know, white gays are like what you like aspire to, you know,
they are the prize.
They're the prize basically. And you know, muscular gays are the ones who you should aspire to be or like to love, versus like, you know, bears, you know, or like anybody else who isn't like muscular, you know. There's all these different like things that come into play that may make you feel like you may not be necessarily like desirable. And those are those do play a factor. But I will say this, and I feel like I personally have some of that internalized as well. Like I would say like, early on, I probably wasn't, I never really went on dates with like other gay Black men. And it wasn't until I recognized in myself that I had like those racist notions that, you know, like white gays are the most desirable and I should aspire to be with one. You know, that's when I was like, oh, I need to interrogate that. I need to interrogate like why I need to be with someone who's like thin. Why I need to interrogate why I need to be with someone who is in the same class, you know, as myself. You know, all these things, and I think it's not a one and done type of thing. Like you always have to interrogate those things on a day-to-day basis. You always have to ask yourself like, why is it that I find this person more attractive than this other person? You know, is society telling me that that's how it should be? But I think more so lately, what's been important for me when I'm like trying to date someone is to find someone who's sort of politically aligned with myself. I think you and I have had conversations around that. I'm very much a person of the left, like politically. Like I'm a leftist. I'm still like trying to define what that exactly looks like for me. And I would have a hard time dating somebody who isn't on the left, or, you know, and I'm not sure that I would want to invest in a person like that, you know, the same way that I wouldn't want to invest in like a white partner who isn't like actively educating themselves, you know, and anti-racist and educating himself on like things like racism and all these things. Like, I don't think I want that, you know, that I think that would be a lot of like heavy lifting in the relationship where you have to always call them out. And like, do you really want to sign up for that? I don't think so.
Exactly. Oh no, I understand and co-sign that. And and you know. Yeah. But and one thing I want to point out is all the hierarchies that you just mentioned also exist in heterosexual relationships. Yeah. Just so people don't think that, oh my gosh, gay relationships are complicated. Right. No. All kinds of relationships are complicated and messy, and you do have to question every single step of the way. Right. Why am I attracted to this and not that?
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
So I've encountered Africans who think that the West is a haven for queer people. Do you agree? And what would you say is the difference between being discriminated against here in the West versus in Burundi or Africa as a whole?
Yeah. Ooh, that's a good question.
Because to be clear, there is discrimination here.
There is discrimination too. Yeah. Like, is the West like a haven for queer people more so than Africa is? I don't think so. I think the West
Hurdles.
has its own hurdles and obstacles, and like, I'm very lucky to live in a place like Austin, which I think it's a very open and very like place to be gay, but I don't know that I would necessarily feel the same way in any other place. And I don't want to say like some random rural town in like, I don't know, Montana, because I'm sure there are queer people out there who are also probably thriving in that town. And I always try to move away from like, putting contrasting urban versus rural areas, because like you may not know, like there are rural areas out there where queer people and gay people are like thriving and living their best life. But there are also other places where like queer people in America are not thriving, are being kicked out of shelters, being kicked out of different opportunities, are not afforded the same protections that so yeah. But in a way, Burundi and just Africa in general isn't at the same like place that America is and like other Western countries are, in a way, like in specifically as in codifying like laws that make being gay okay, in society. But I feel like generally, like when I look at people in Africa, in Burundi, and people here in America, like I feel like people can be on like in the same kind of boat. Like there are some folks who are accepting, there's some folks who are not accepting in either like setting. But I feel like in America, it is codified in like the laws.
Yeah, you are protected by the law to some
exactly
extent.
I'm protected by the law, where in Africa, in Burundi specifically, I am not necessarily protected by the law.
You are criminalized.
I'm criminalized basically
by the law.
basically. So that's the difference. So is it better here than it is there? To some degree, yes, but I don't want to completely write off like Africa or like other places in Africa, because some are moving forward very quickly and are adopting queer friendly laws, laws that protect gay folks in those countries. I want to give a shout out to Gabon. They just recently passed a law in the parliament and I think the Senate that will decriminalize like gay people and all that stuff. And so
that is amazing. I didn't know about that. Shout out to Gabon.
Right.
I really like your answer because it's complex, and it's a complex answer to a complex question.
Yeah.
And I think people need to who think that coming here is gonna be easy.
Right.
I think need to take all these things that you just mentioned into consideration.
It is all very nuanced, It is all very
and trans people here, trans women are killed
literally
at crazy. It's like it's an epidemic basically, and it's probably true in Burundi too. But just so people understand the nuance there. Okay, so Burundi on the Map recently posted the first post I've ever seen on any Burundian platform about
pride.
Queer, yes. And I was like, what is happening?
Right. I feel like all of us were like, what is happening?
And so that is crazy. And I want to know what your thoughts are on queer visibility on Burundian platforms, especially the media.
Right.
Why is visibility important? And, and I'm not going to ask why it's not there. We know why it's not there. But the more I see young people take over media platforms like Yaga and all these other places, I'm seeing evolution, and I'm seeing them talk about like women and misogyny, but I haven't seen them talk about like interview queer people. Please tell me what your thoughts are.
No, I think first of all, shout out to the folks who are running the Burundi on the Map page. Like, you're
Mm.
constantly elevating the conversation around Burundi and what it means to be Burundian. And so like big shout out to you guys. Uh,
Mm.
and going back to like visibility, I think um, it's really important for like media platforms to talk about like queer visibility. And to always bring it up because that we talked about like how do we uproot homophobia and all these things from our society, and I think it starts with these conversations. It starts with like um, no longer silencing queer voices, elevating queer voices,
Mm-hmm.
amplifying queer voices, and saying, hey,
Mm.
they're worthy of like the same respect and care that anybody else in our society is entitled to. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and um and so to me that was like it was a pretty radical thing to see, given
Mm.
our context, given our circumstances.
Mm-hmm.
I was beyond happy, and I
Yeah.
even went like down in the comment section to see like who was like commenting and like saying things, and like
Mm.
the folks who were like the queer Burundians that I saw on there who were like, thank you for, posting this, like this
Yeah.
means a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Those were receiving lots of likes, like averaging like
Yes.
65 likes, versus someone who was coming
Yes.
on there with their like hate or whatever, who was like getting maybe
Mm.
like 3-4 likes. I was like, wow, like even the comment section is like a reflection of like how we're moving forward. You know what I mean? How we're
Mm.
basically saying like we deserve to be here, we deserve to like to exist, and we are
Yeah.
not longer going to be in silence, and we appreciate like other straight allies or other folks who are standing up and saying, they're here and they're
Mm-hmm.
here to stay. um,
Amen.
and so yeah, that I think that's like the importance of queer visibility. It
Yeah.
really helps us move forward. It really helps us move the
Mm-hmm.
conversation forward. um, and who knows, like this is one of the many first steps towards like queer liberation in
Yeah.
Burundi and across the continent.
Yes.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
So
So
yeah.
I want to add to this to say that what is made visible on media platforms
Mm-hmm.
basically determines what is accepted
Right.
as the norm in any
Exactly.
society.
Exactly.
So when as Burundians, when we don't give uh, our platforms to
Mm-hmm.
queer people, we're basically telling the world that they don't exist.
Mm-hmm.
But we all know that that's not true.
Exactly.
They do exist.
Mm-hmm.
So if you are a Burundian with a large following, if you create content,
Mm-hmm.
I encourage you to give your platform to any queer people that you know, to basically make it the norm
Mm-hmm.
for them to exist in any spaces,
Mm-hmm.
not just in the media, but also in conferences, at events, at things, so that people know
Mm-hmm.
that this is not an abnormality or
Mm-hmm.
you know a weird or abnormal occurrence,
Right.
and it's yeah, normalize giving the platform and making queer people visible.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm sorry. I'm not sure if I can like swear, but I just
No, you.
did.
Hey, listen.
Yeah.
It's a free space here.
Okay.
What's tangible? I know you have some queer Burundian friends
Mm-hmm.
who are still in Burundi. What tangible things can we do
Mm.
to protect and support the Burundian community? And before we talk about this,
Mm-hmm.
one thing I want to say about the previous point is, a lot of people commenting and supporting the Burundi on the map post just made me wonder if that support is due to the fact that most of the people who follow that page might be in the West, and maybe our
Mm.
minds have evolved and we're growing and learning,
Right.
as opposed to to if the majority of the following was actually
In Burundi.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's just a question that I had. I don't know if it's the case.
Yeah. I mean, it's really hard to say if, you
Mm,
know, they felt comfortable like sharing that on their platform because their audience is mostly like in the diaspora. or, you know, versus like folks who are in the country. I, which also goes back to like my previous statement. I'm not sure if people who are in Burundi are more homophobic than folks who are in the diaspora. I tend to think that like there are folks who are very supportive in Burundi, but because they, I just heard a door.
I know. I'm
It's okay.
sorry.
But I want to say so. But they may not necessarily feel comfortable expressing their support being in Burundi, given like the laws and everything. So I think like one big way to like, I think a major step that needs to happen is to decriminalize like homosexuality in Burundi, like take it out of the books, the laws and everything. That would be like a major way to protect the queer community out there. And I think it's it's like that would be one way, and I feel like sharing these like stories on like media platforms. You know, I would love, maybe not right now, but I would love to see like agasiring haninde change umucho, like highlighting like a queer Burundian couple, you know,
Yeah.
like in the future, like normalizing that, you know, that's one way to move us forward and to protect us. Normalizing that, and protecting us may mean that if you are a homophobic person in Burundi who does harm unto a queer Burundian person, that you can be held accountable for that, you know?
Right. Yeah.
That would mean a lot in terms of protection. And so that's like one of the many ways to start protecting the LGBTQ community in Burundi. But I also like don't have all the answers, and I think there should be, you know, like some sort of convention or conference with like Burundian queers where we all come together and like draft some sort of, you know, document that says here is how you can protect us, here is how you can effectively change our society and help us move forward. And so like
yeah, especially as the diaspora,
yeah,
I feel very helpless in terms of,
right,
man, I know you're houseless, and I know you're,
yeah,
you know, going through this, but
right,
I'm so far and I don't know exactly what I can
right,
do.
exactly. And so
Yeah.
yeah,
Okay. Well, we've reached the end of this episode.
uh-huh.
I don't know if you have any last thoughts before we conclude.
Oh my gosh, I don't really have any other last thought. I want to say thank you for having me again. This was a beautiful conversation. I mean, it's always a pleasure to like speak with you. I feel like I grew from
Likewise.
each one of our conversation, and so, and I'm happy
Yeah.
like I think it's like Law and King for like creating this platform and giving
Yeah.
us the opportunity to like share, you know, about ourselves and about our lives across the diaspora and, you know,
Yes.
within the country. And
Yeah.
so thank you. Thank you.
No, thank you so much for
Yeah.
coming and for doing the labor of educating all of us for
Oh,
free.
no worries.
And most importantly for being vulnerable and candid about some of the things that were probably difficult
Yeah.
to talk about. Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, and I share your feelings. I love talking to you. You're one of my favorite people in the whole wide world, and it's always, I don't take this lightly. It's a privilege to be able to reason through difficult things and question and, you know,
Uh-huh.
wrestle with some of these things with you. And some of the things we talk about even go beyond this topic. And so yeah,
Absolutely.
I appreciate
I
you.
appreciate you too.
Thank you everyone for hanging out with us for an hour and a half now. We look forward to continuing to create content that uplifts us as a people and as a community. And if you would like, Aury, do you feel comfortable sharing your socials if people want to follow you or anything like
Sure.
that?
I'm not super active on my socials, but you're more than happy to follow me. So my name on Instagram handle is Aury BWA Oribra. Yeah, just follow me on there. Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Amazing. Thank you so much, and I'll talk to you later.
Alrighty. Bye bye.
Bye bye.